Superman 4, The Quest for Peace. This is going to be a huge rant. This might be one of the biggest unholy rants that I've ever done. Because I hate this movie. I hate it with a passion. There is so much wrong about it. As much as I don't like Superman 3, as much as I'm disappointed about that movie, this one goes to a whole new low of suctitude. It's not directed by Richard Lester, which, as after all the negative things I've said about him as a director and storyteller, I might take it back. Because this time, this film is directed by Sidney J. Furie. Great dude. You did a great job. Really, really great job. But I can't give all of the hatred towards the director because the story was in part put together by Christopher Reeve himself. He was a big opponent for the story and for the themes of the story. I'm not so sure it came out the way that he would have liked, but a lot of this was his ideas and what he wanted to see a Superman movie be. So I'm gonna throw some shade at the man himself as well. The opening scene, we see Superman save these astronauts out in space because of some bullshit that happened out there. Okay, who cares? I know that it's a good thing to start a Superman movie off with him saving people or him doing something very heroic and something that even only he can do, like go out in space. But it's so painfully obvious that the budget on this movie is probably half of what the last few movies have been. I don't know why you would start this movie in space when it looks as bad as it does. You almost instantly go, whoa, what's happened to the production of the Superman movies in the last 10 years or so? This movie was 1987, about 9 years after the first film, and just a couple years after the last movie. It just, not good. Not good at all. Then we see Clark Kent on the farm in Smallville, and you see that Martha Kent has passed away, his adopted Earth mother. And this was always sad to me because we didn't do nearly enough of character building, of relationship building with Clark and his Earth mother. This is huge. We saw how close he was to his Earth father, Jonathan Kent, in the first film. The heart attack scene, the advice he gives him, like that's a big moment. And if he's only left with his mother, why didn't we get anything of that? Why didn't we bring her back for this movie? If we see Clark on the farm, why isn't she there? Why did they just kill her off? It seems like a waste. It seems like a missed opportunity with Clark having these moments with his mother. That could have been real nice scenes, scenes to bring him back to Earth and make him feel more human instead of just him walking around the house by himself. In the barn, he finds the ship that he came down to Earth in, and he finds this Kryptonian energy. And there's a recording there from his Kryptonian mother who tells him he has to be careful with this because it's the last one of its kind. That's not going to be important later on. And then you see a realtor show up at the house, and Clark refuses to sell the farm to him, which, again, could have been more interesting, but he just doesn't do it, and then that's the last we hear about it. So there you go. Superman, Clark goes back to Metropolis. We see him on the subway, which is interesting to see Clark Kent using the subway. I mean, I know he doesn't want to have people know he's Superman, but if I could fly, I would not be using the subway. I would just fly to wherever I had to go and then change outfits, and there I am. But he wants to commute. He wants to be a man of the people. The train goes out of control, so Superman shows up to stop it and save it, and there's your another two moments of Superman saving people. We find out that the Daily Planet has gone bankrupt, and it has been bought out by this guy, David Warfield, and one of the first acts that they do is they fire Perry White. Because fuck him, right? Who cares about Perry White? It seems so weird to jump right into this. You don't give this Perry White actor much to do. You could argue that he didn't always have a lot to do in the other movies, but it seems odd. It seems odd to do this. Very random. The guy hires his own daughter Lacey as the new editor in chief, and Lacey, you expect her to be a prima donna and to be annoying and be rude and mean. And you could argue, hey, they didn't go for type. They did do something surprising with her, is that she's a halfway decent person. And she immediately shows interest and has feelings for Clark Kent. In fact, she seduces the guy and basically asks him out on a date, and Clark goes for it. Now, I don't know why we did this. Maybe it's just to establish the scene that we're going to do later on where Clark and Superman double date with two different girls. But I couldn't help but think, where the fuck is Lana Lang? We just established that she was working at the planet. We set up this dynamic of Lana and Clark, Lois being there jealous, but maybe she'll still have her Superman thing. That should have been the double date here. We should have had Lana carry over. We didn't need the whole planet being bought out. We didn't need new owners. We didn't need all of this convoluted stuff. If you're telling me that Annette O'Toole didn't want to come back, then all right, fine. That's a whole nother story. And maybe they just wanted that dynamic, but create a different character to do it. And okay, but something tells me Annette O'Toole wasn't too busy and that she probably would have come back for this if they cared enough to bring her back. But they didn't. And so, since Clark now is dating this Lacey chick, once again, Lois gets jealous. Because Lois, Margot Kidder's character, is very likable. Not so much. Nuclear war. This is the aspect of the story that I read that Christopher Reeve was very high on, and he wanted to delve deep into it. I know it's similar to what was going on in the times when this movie was coming out. So I guess he just wanted to address it. What would Superman do in this situation? Okay, putting Superman in real life situations and real life conflicts is interesting and can make sense. I just don't like how it's handled. This whole problem is introduced, and Superman is sort of questioning whether or not he should get involved. There's even a scene where he asks Lois for advice. He goes back to the Fortress of Solitude, and he asks Kryptonian ancestors for advice, which, why do we have Kryptonian ancestors as a part of the crystal hologram stuff? When was that ever established that this could happen? Why would Jor-El, Marlon Brando, why would he get lifeness or the likeness of these other Kryptonians and install them into the fortress too? It's so bizarre. It's so weird. It reeks of, we're not going to pay Marlon Brando or the actress who played his mother. So we're just going to get these new people that you don't know and don't have any connection to and have them talk to Clark, because why not? And then a little boy writes Superman a letter, which, again, kind of interesting. This little kid is asking Superman, hey, can you do this? Can you, and sure, this is what warms Clark's heart. This is what makes Superman ultimately decide to do it. He goes to the United Nations, holds a meeting with everyone, and tells him that he's going to rid the planet of nuclear weapons. Now, I fully believe that there is a movie where you could have had this be a main crux of the plot. Obviously, you'd have to have other villains there for Superman to fight and punch and stuff. But as far as worldly issues, as far as something going on in the background hanging over Superman's head, this could be something interesting. If this was a Superman TV show, this would make for a good episode. But the way how it's easily wrapped up and easily handled, easily solved, Superman just, because a kid writes him a letter, that's what pushes him over the edge. This is a huge, major topic issue that you need to spend more time with. You need to spend more care with. You can't just have Superman make such a rash and big decision out of the blue because of a letter So he takes all of the nuclear weapons that he can find, he sends them out to space, into the sun to destroy them. Oh, okay. So now we live in a world where there's no nuclear weapons. I guess that's the right thing to do. Lenny Luthor. Let's talk about Lenny Luthor, shall we? This character reeks of a Bill and Ted like ripoff. Like it feels like, hey, we're gonna have this totally dude like character, younger character, who every time he speaks annoys the hell out of me. Every time he's like, "Whoa, Lex, Uncle Lex," I don't like it. I don't think it's funny. There's so many goofy moments that they try to have with Lenny Luthor, and he's played by John Cryer, who would go on to be in Two and a Half Men, but now he's even playing Lex Luthor on Supergirl, the TV show. So that's sort of bizarre. It's weird to go back and watch this movie and to think that actor is going to play Lex Luthor one day in the future. I guess so. Lenny breaks Lex out of prison, which is weird because he does it as they're outside, the prisoners, they're outside doing like work, and it seems way too easy. I love the way that Lex breaks out of prison in Superman 2 with the hologram, very creative. Miss Tessmacher being involved and Otis being involved, but this just seemed half-ass, seemed unbelievable, makes the prison system look incompetent, which who knows, maybe they are. As they're out, his new scheme, his new plan is to steal Superman's hair, which I mentioned actually in my video for Superman 3 that's an idea that could have worked if you want to try to clone Superman or want to try to do something with his DNA. Stealing something like that makes sense. It's so weird that there's a museum that has a strand of Superman's hair just sitting there, easily able to steal, easily out there in the open. And so, yes, Lex steals it, and he uses it to put it onto a missile, and the missile gets launched, and Superman, when he goes to grab it and throw it into the sun, it creates this huge effect. And you do see mad scientist Lex Luthor. You got a little bit of that in the first movie, but this movie really hits that home. I was never a fan of mad scientist Lex, so honestly, this doesn't do much for me, this whole idea, this whole plan. But then we see that Lex has created Nuclear Man. Nuclear Man just might be the worst villain in a superhero movie ever. I say that because when you see him, he's this big, buff, blonde dude who looks like he was hired because he was on the cover of some fitness magazine or something. It's clear that the guy can't act because even his voice is dubbed over by Gene Hackman himself. How pathetic! Why would you hire this guy if maybe his voice sounds terrible or maybe he just can't act and it sounded bad? I don't know. Was it just because he had an interesting look to him? Maybe. And the fact that this guy, sure, he's powerful. Sure, he has Superman's strengths and a lot of the powers that he possesses. But his weakness, if people thought that Superman's weakness being an alien rock was dumb, and I know that some people do, this guy's weakness is that if he's not in sunlight, he just shuts down. He shuts down like he's a robot. He literally powers down and just goes down and doesn't move, and not until he gets sunlight again does he up and move. How dumb is this? Who wrote this shit? This is terrible. You mean to tell me that out of all the options of villains that we could have gone with, out of all of the Superman villains that Lex could have had a hand in creating, I'm talking about Metallo, I'm talking about Brainiac or Bizarro, all of these, and there's many more. There's many, many more. But those are the big ones that have been neglected to be used in any film by this point, or even now. You create Nuclear Man and give him these lame ass abilities, this lame ass weakness, and just There's more badness to this character, though, as we go along. I should mention Gene Hackman as Lex Luthor. Gene Hackman, I've gone on record before to say that Gene Hackman is not my favorite Lex Luthor. In fact, I don't even think I like him all that much as Lex Luthor. He's fine. There are good scenes with him. There are good moments with him. I think the first two movies use him as well as you can, especially for the time. I am more of a fan of the more recent Lex Luthor, the business Lex Luthor, the guy who's rich, in charge. He's this public figure. He has this image, but behind the scenes, he hates Superman. You give him a good reason to hate Superman, a logical reason to hate Superman. I think Smallville's Michael Rosenbaum is the best live action Lex Luthor I have ever seen. And so, Gene Hackman, I get it. He's one of the originals. He's a lot of people's favorite Lexes for many reasons. He's never been mine. Sure, you get scenes of him in this big office and he's doing underhanded deals and that's how he's getting his money. So maybe it's closer, but he's still never been my Lex. I never liked the idea that because Hackman never wanted to shave his head, even though he was going bald anyways, it's just like, just dude, shave your head. You're playing Lex Luthor. Stop with this frizzy hair that you won't part with, you won't get rid of. You look silly. At least the second movie had him wearing a bald cap. At least there was that. So let's talk about this scene that apparently they wanted to do so bad that they created the Lacey character for. Superman, first, he is supposed to go on a date with Lois. Clark is supposed to go on a date with Lacey, and they're going to double date together. So how are we going to make this happen? They're two of the same people. It's supposed to be this Three's Company-like scene. It's definitely an 80s sitcom-like scene of Clark going back and forth, in and out of the room, turning into Superman, going to have to leave, and then Clark running back in. It might have been a halfway decent idea, but looking back, it does not hold up. It's more silly antics. And I need to mention this. Superman has this scene with Lois Lane because he's feeling sad, because he's going back and forth on if he did the right thing or not. He reveals himself to Lois, which this is a major issue because I know we did this in the first two movies. We had these big scenes with Superman and Lois, and especially the second movie when she finds out that he's Superman, it's this whole big deal. And since that these two haven't had that much scenes together, hasn't had a lot of chemistry together since before the third movie even, for him to randomly do this seems so out of the blue, so out of character, where he takes her, he reveals himself, and then he flies with her. And the Superman Lois flying scene, it can be looked as cheesy and corny from the original. It can be looked as something that maybe you don't love, especially because Lois is narrating that poem as they're doing it, and yeah, it is very cheesy. But it's still a moment. It's still a nice moment between the characters. It's when the two of them fall in love, so I like it. This one just seems like a blatant ripoff, seems like a cheap imitation of it, and I say cheap in more ways than one. Not just because it looks horrible production-wise, backdrop-wise. You could tell it's just the two actors on wires with a backdrop, like a horrible projection backdrop behind them. Yes, that was how they did the original movie, but the original movie, it looked good. It looked like he was really flying. How do we, 9 years later, make it look worse? Because it's just not enough time, not enough care, and not enough effort put into it. But it's also lazy because it's lame character moments. Because it's all taken away after he takes her back to the balcony. He gives her the amnesia kiss, which is one of the worst things that even the second movie did, where he took away their relationship, took away Lois's memories, and undid all of that character growth that the two of them had. Undid it all, which is a moment that I think a lot of people dislike, even from the second movie. So we have him eliminating brain cells of Lois freely at this point. Like, how often does he do this? Why is he so comfortable and okay with having a moment like this with Lois? and then taking it all away from her. This is the most selfish thing I think Superman has ever done. And he spun the world around to go back in time and save Lois once. And I still think that this moment, with what he does with Lois here, is more selfish. Man, clearly I hate this and I hate that scene. So as he's in the middle of this wacky double date, hardy har har, funny, he sees a message that only he can see. How did Lex configure a billboard message that only Superman would be able to see? I know it's a superhero film, I know it's a comic book film, and I know probably a lot of people didn't think about stuff like that back then, but it's still dumb. Lex tells him to meet him at his tower. Superman does so, and that's when Lex, he can't help himself. And this could come off as annoying. I could count this as a strike against this movie, and I almost do, because everything else is so terrible. But Lex being so pompous and arrogant to reveal his plan to Superman in this over-the-top comic book villain way, I'm fine with. I am. It's in his character, at least from what these movies have established as Lex's character. And then that's when we get the showdown. That's when we get the first battle between Superman and Nuclear Man. And this is so anticlimactic. You have Nuclear Man throwing the Statue of Liberty off and it's following, and Superman has to catch it. It's basically just Nuclear Man destroying landmass properties and big landmines, and Superman's having to fix it and chase after him, and it's silly, and it's silly. Volcanoes, just all of these things that like Nuclear Man is causing. I guess just to have this chase, like I don't get it. Why doesn't Nuclear Man just fight him and kill him? What's with all this back and forth stuff? You even have these random moments of Superman having telekinesis, abilities that he's never had in the comics before, which, granted, Richard Lester was a huge reason why that random ability in Superman 2 of him taking the S off of his chest and wrapping it around somebody, I still don't understand what that power is supposed to be. So sure, maybe the movies have created random abilities before, but this is so bad. This is so like, no, he can't do that. Don't tell me he can do that. Don't try to pretend like that's a normal ability for Superman. Read a comic book, would ya? Oh, all right. So the fight keeps rolling on, and you see Nuclear Man take out his fingernails. Woohoo! The shot of Nuclear Man trying to look menacing, trying to look scary, trying to look tough, looking over at Superman as he's flying, and then bringing his fingertips up with the nails at the end of them, and then trying to scratch Superman. This is horrible. This is terrible. This is one of the worst superhero fight action scenes I have ever seen. And it's only not the worst because Catwoman exists. But this is atrocious. So Nuclear Man actually does scratch Superman and injures him, takes him out. People even start to think that Superman's dead because he's gone for a long period of time. And the Daily Planet even publishes an article that says Superman dead, because I guess they're going for more of a tabloid TMZ-like approach. Lois doesn't like this. This actually makes sense for Lois to be upset about, and she feels like she might even quit the company, like she's disgusted by it. Lois goes to Clark's apartment, and she tells him her feelings for Superman, which okay, I get it. She's telling the man that she doesn't know is Superman, that she has feelings for Superman. Ha ha, it's the same person. Like, we've been through this in the first two movies. Let's move on. Let's have progression. Let's make Lois smart again. But no, we're just gonna go back to norm, go back to basics, and keep that same scheme going on. Now, Clark is obviously sick because of the effects of Nuclear Man. He's deathly sick. He's out of it. He tells Lois he can't really talk. And then, I know there's some deleted scenes to this movie. I do. I know that technically somebody put together a director's cut of the deleted scenes, and I've seen them on YouTube. They're fine, but nothing will ever make this make sense or make any of this convoluted chain of events make any sense, because some time passes, I guess, and Clark is just, he's an old man. There's no establishing exposition of even Lex saying, hey, if we do this to him, if we scratch him because the nails are made of Kryptonian, like nothing, as dumb as that is, at least that would be an explanation. There's no explanation. He just starts to get sick and starts to get old and looks like an old man. He has gray hair and his skin's old. What is going on? On his dying breath, his last bit of energy, he just remembers, oh yes, remember that Kryptonian energy that we found in the ship earlier in the barn? He makes his way over toward that. What a lame way, a lame excuse for the movie to have to heal him. It's so anticlimactic. It's so no build up to it. Things just happen in this movie with no emotional substance to it whatsoever. So he heals himself, and just then, Nuclear Man declares that he has a crush on Lacey. What? I know that Nuclear Man is technically a clone, somewhat, even though he doesn't look like Superman. But I guess he's still a clone of him, so maybe he shares some of his same thoughts, some of his same feelings. And so, okay, fine, maybe it kind of does make sense he would have feelings for Lacey, but wouldn't he have stronger feelings for Lois? Wouldn't Lois be the person that he would go after just now? And because it's Lois, shouldn't she be the main object of affection so that she's the most in danger instead of this random Lacey character that we barely know and barely care about? Nuclear Man says, if I don't have Lacey, then I will start causing mayhem and chaos and destruction. That's when Superman shows up to have yet another fight with Nuclear Man. And this fight gets even worse. Superman throws Nuclear Man into an elevator, and he brings the elevator to the moon. And I talked about earlier when Superman saved those astronauts, the first scene, how horrible space looked, how cheap it looked. This is where you really get to see the cheapness, though. This is where you get to see just why it looks so bad. You can see the black curtains in the background that's supposed to be space. The production value is horrible. They should be ashamed of themselves for making this. I could make a better Superman in space fight scene than this bullshit that was done here. It's sad. It's pathetic. You don't even care about Superman and Nuclear Man having this fight and throwing each other around on the moon, throwing rocks at each other. There's even a point where Nuclear Man buries Superman in the moon, and that's supposed to be like a sad moment or a despair moment, but you just don't care because you're probably too busy laughing at the cheapness of how all of this looks. Then, and just then, Nuclear Man goes back and grabs Lacey, brings her into space. What? He has this human in space, and it's not like he takes her into space and then she starts choking because she can't breathe, and Nuclear Man maybe didn't realize that he would kill her, and you could have something go on there and Superman has to save her quickly. But no, she's just out in space, breathing fine, looking around like, oh yes, I'm out here. What the fuck, guys? Pay attention. Have some logic to this. Why is a human in space? It shows that these filmmakers, these producers, don't care about what was put into those first movies, about how much appreciation and love Donner had for the character and what he brought to those movies. This is just so lazy and so half-assed, and that moment of Lacey in space is the perfect representation of just how lazy this is. So Superman wakes up, gets out of the moon. He moves the moon to the point where there's a solar eclipse, and so that there's no sun at all, which probably just destroyed half of the world and its resources, but it's only for a short time. And he saves Lacey and brings her back to Earth because she's fine, I guess. And Nuclear Man has shut down Because the dumbest weakness ever is just he just shuts down. Wouldn't it make more sense that because he has the similar properties of Superman, similar character traits, that the lack of sunlight would just make him weak, not just shut him down completely? But okay, fine. So then Superman grabs Nuclear Man and throws him into this power plant and destroys it. Destroys Nuclear Man. Because even though Superman doesn't really want to kill, who cares at this point? Just kill him. The end of the movie, Perry White got a loan and bought the Daily Planet back. He not only bought it back, but he has ruled the Warfield character. He ruled him a minor shareholder, so it prevents this newspaper from being bought out again. Wow, that was really quick and random. You didn't even give me a story with Perry White where like maybe you thought we were actually going to get him, maybe trying to come back or do something. No, it's just a random scene of him showing up and saying, "I now own the place." Wow. Superman has a press conference to talk about how people who want peace, they can have peace, but the government has to realize it and give them peace and peace and love, peace and love. Ugh. I get it. Superman is all about peace, is all about love, is all about what's right for people, but it felt so hand-fisted. It felt so shoved down my throat, this whole message. I get it, Christopher Reeve. You want people to be nice to each other. I get it. Then Superman returns Lex back to prison because we're going to keep doing this over and over again. And he brings Lenny to a children's home because Lenny is a child. No, he's like 25 years old. But okay, whatever you say, dude. This movie is atrocious. This movie is an abomination. This movie is one of the worst, not just superhero movies, but the worst movies of all the times. I can't stand it. I get a headache watching the movie, talking about the movie, having to rationalize moments of the movie. There is no rationalization. It's a train wreck. It's an absolute mess of a movie. So guys, let me know in the comments below, what do you think of Superman 4, The Quest for Peace? Do you agree that it's a shit bomb on wheels? Do you agree that it's absolutely garbage? You have to, right? There can't be one person out there. I defy you. Show yourself if you're a fan, if you like this movie. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. Later.